What you just witnessed were young patriots from the TPUSA event at Mount Vernon screening George Washington, Young Washington, put out there by Angel Studios. And you just heard their reaction to it. I had to look it up because I thought, is this really a bunch of young people randomly coming together for, I don't know, some screening of the film independently? This has to be a group. And sure enough, it was TPUSA, but still, it's encouraging to see young people. These are people that are probably, they may not even have a political memory of the Obama first term, the administration under Barack Obama. And they are coming together and looking at a hero from our past and saying, you know what, that's who we want to emulate. That's who we want to cheer for. They're cheering for him like they would for a sports hero. So I just want to say off the bat, white pill, we're going to start the podcast this way. We're going to end the podcast this way. There's going to be some valleys and mountains in between, but I want you to feel encouraged. There's a lot of good things going on, even if you hear a lot of negative things. That's how the world's always been. But don't forget the good things, right? And that's one of the good things. There are people waking up, and some of them are younger people, and they recognize what virtue looks like, what heroism looks like, what their heritage looks like, what the good things about America are. And of course, those were certainly exemplified in Young Washington. Go check it out. I did a whole episode on it last Sunday. If you haven't seen it, you're going to want to go watch it. Just so you can understand how great this man was, even greater, in my opinion, than the film portrays. So I haven't done a news roundup in a while. I wanted to start off with that, but we're going to talk about a bunch of other stuff. We're going to get into controversial things. We're going to talk about the news. We're going to talk about religious and Christian related news. We're talking about the Pope and his latest encyclical and just so much more, because I took a break. Was it really a break? I was doing a lot of stuff. It was just more for long-term projects and special episodes and so forth. But as far as the news roundup is concerned, yes, you're right. I skipped a week for those of you who were counting. And it's the holidays. What can I say? For me, the 4th of July, from July 4th to July 12th, that's like a blackout zone. It's like Christmas. It's like between Christmas and New Year's. That's July 4th to July 12th. And the reason I say July 12th is because that's my birthday. And it's just always been that way since I was a kid. One of the most wonderful times of the year. We celebrate our country's birthday. And then, not to sound too selfish here, but we celebrate my birthday. And from my perspective, what can be better, right? It's also really warm. You can go outside. You can do all sorts of great things. And I'm going to show you a video at the end of the podcast. So stay tuned for that, of some of the things that I did on one afternoon and one morning of last week. And I filmed, let's just say, some water related activities for you to see. Anyway, lots going on. I'm going to be, by the way, for those who are going to this, I'm going to be at Michael Foster's conference this coming weekend. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's in Batavia, Ohio. I'm sure if you went to Michael Foster's X profile or Substack, you would find the link to it, but it's really on ministry. It's for elders and pastors and their wives, and understanding really practical things about ministry. This is the first time in a long time I've signed up for a conference that I am not speaking at. I mean, if I'm speaking, I guess I don't have to sign up. But so actually, it's the first time in a long time I've signed up for a conference, period. I don't tend to go to conferences all that much. And traveling and getting there, and just, I'm already traveling a lot for what I do. So I just don't go a lot. And this is one that I thought, this is so good. He didn't pay me to say this, but the topics are so out of the box, but so practical. And the format of the conference, I'm excited for it. They're not filming it, so there's going to be probably a lot more just freedom to talk about whatever you want. And they're short sessions with a lot of Q&A. And so anyway, hopefully I'll see you there if you're coming to that. And let's jump into it. Let's talk about the news of the week and a half, as it were. Of course, the news today is we're still talking about the unfortunate death of Lindsey Graham, senator from South Carolina. We're also talking a little bit about the escalation of things concerning the Strait of Hormuz and the war with Iran. That's not really a war, but it kind of is. We're in this weird limbo. I was just watching Trump make some comments about it. It was either this morning or yesterday, where he's saying, look, as far as I'm concerned, I'm done with this whole thing, because these people lie. You can't trust them. And this is kind of the problem with dealing with people who don't keep their word and interpret things the way they want to interpret them. You can have, doesn't matter how many pieces of paper that you sign with them, they will reject your proposals and they will do their own thing. And that's kind of what we're seeing. I think he makes a good point, though. He says, like, well, look at the way they're acting. Aren't you glad they don't have a nuclear bomb? And that was the primary objective here. So maybe you could say the whole thing wasn't exactly as given the optimism Trump had going into it. He didn't reach the goals that I think he was hoping to reach. At the same time, the stated war goal for Marco Rubio has been reached. And that was essentially kicking the can down the road. He didn't phrase it that way, but it was keeping them from getting immunity so that they could protect their nuclear program in the future. And right now they don't have immunity and their nuclear program is in shambles. That can be rebuilt, though. So that's why I say it's managing a problem, not solving it. Is that a success? It's a mixed bag. That's what it is. And unfortunately, that's what the Middle East is. It's something you manage. It's not something you can solve. But that's also in the news. I think a lot of people are tired about that stuff, and they want to talk about probably more domestic policy related things. And we're going to talk about a lot of that. The theme for the podcast, though, is narratives. And this is a theme for a lot of podcasts, but that's the thought that was coming to my mind as I was looking at all the subjects that I'm going to tackle, including this Tyler Robinson, Charlie Kirk issue and the assassination attempt, including the 4th of July celebrations and everything surrounding that. The speech Trump made at Mount Rushmore, where he rejected the proposition nation idea. And he talked about America as if it were, because it is, a story of heroes and people who wanted to pass down something valuable to their children. And I thought it was a wonderful speech. But then you had, of course, the next day, you had, and the day of the 4th of July, you had famous people, actors, all, like saying the typical stuff, talking about how America is a proposition nation. And then you had Patriot Front marching. And I know this is kind of old news for some of you, but I've had a lot of, questions, comments about Patriot Front. And so maybe a lot's a bit of an overstatement. I've had enough that I thought, you know what, I'll just talk about this a little bit. Maybe we'll talk about it more if it becomes a big thing. To me, it's not the most interesting thing in the world, but I understand that some people want to know what it's really about. What's really going on here? Is this a bunch of feds? Is this a government op? Is this legitimate? Are they patriots? Are they white supremacists? Is it good, bad? How should Christians think? So we'll talk about that a little bit. And there's a lot of other news stories, of course. So let's get into it. Let's start from the beginning here. And I want to talk a little bit about Senator Lindsey Graham, if I may, the senator from South Carolina, the distinguished senator from South Carolina, who is no longer with us. And there's conspiracy surrounding his departure from this earth. What happened exactly? In fact, if you go to his X profile, one of the recent posts he made was he was joking, he was being humorous about the fact that in Tehran, they were having a rally and they were holding up his image along with a number of other American citizens' images who they found to be influential and anti-Iranian in their minds, and or at least against the IRGC, and they have a target on him. And Lindsey Graham says, well, at least they got my picture right. At least they chose a good picture. And so good sense of humor to the end. But of course, this also fueled people thinking, who took him out? Was it really a heart attack? Was it really just dying because he had a ruptured aorta? Or is it the fact that he was just in Ukraine and the Russians don't like what he's doing in Ukraine, and the fact that he's been very supportive of what the president has done in the Middle East? He's kind of a war hawk. Kind of might be an understatement. I mean, he's kind of like been for every conflict during his time in the Senate. He's been very bullish on conflicts that the United States gets involved with in foreign areas. Like he seems to have this just, I don't know, big heart. That's the best way you could put because I don't think he's enriching himself. He was only worth like $1.2 million. I know, only worth. But for a senator, that's remarkable. The amount of time he was in the Senate, a lot of people get rich off of that. He wasn't getting money from war contracts, at least in large amounts, it seems like. It seems like he genuinely had a heart. He cared for people he considered to be suffering deprivation across the world. And the United States could come in and help, or these were regimes that were against the United States interests, and he was a war hawk on it. And that's something that I've been critical of in my own personal views in the past and my own personal thoughts. I haven't liked that about him. I certainly haven't liked the fact that he was part of the Gang of Eight. That's going back now a while, but I do sense that there are people online, both left and people who think themselves to be right, who were just dancing on his grave the day he died, just being totally, I don't know, out of step with the Christian civilization that I inherited, where you give it some time. Like death is, and the reason you give it time is because death is such a serious thing, especially when someone dies unexpectedly. It is something that you want to think about, to ponder. You want people to consider their own mortality. It is a frightening thing to go into judgment. Franklin Graham says that Lindsey Graham, no relation, but that Lindsey Graham was a Christian. I really don't know what his beliefs were. I know there's speculation about his personal life choices and so forth, his lifestyle. I don't pretend to know all that. I just, I mean, my hope is that he was a Christian and that he is with the Lord right now. I don't know enough about what he thought about religion and about the Lord. But I do know that when anyone dies, whether they're a Christian or not, and they're a public figure, it's respectful to give it some time. And yes, you can rejoice at the death of the wicked. Does Lindsey Graham really qualify for this compared to other American figures? I don't really see that. And in fact, according to Trump, one of the last things that he was doing was trying to gain momentum for Trump's own agenda, the Save America Act specifically. And so he was doing things that were, I would say, very important for this country. He was a really astute and somewhat diplomatic and effective political leader. He could get stuff done. In fact, he is probably the one credited more than anyone else with getting Judge Kavanaugh across the finish line in the hearings, because it didn't look good. And then Graham comes out with this blistering repeal of everything the Democrats are doing. He embarrasses them, and we have Judge Kavanaugh. And you can see the decisions downstream from that have been positive for Christians and conservatives. So Lindsey Graham's kind of a mixed bag, but it seemed like even though he was anti-Trump, he was pro-amnesty, he was for the forever wars, he was looking with a very realistic set of eyes at the direction things were going in the Republican Party. He ended up shifting, becoming very pro-Trump. And one of the things he was working on the day of his death was trying to amass support for the Save America Act. And this is really, I think Trump's going to make a speech later in the week. This is something I expect Trump to come out really strong on and link what he's doing to Lindsey Graham, trying to make the case that, look, what I'm doing here is also in memory of Lindsey Graham, because this is what he also wanted. And that would be a smart political move for Trump to make, because Lindsey Graham was widely respected in the Senate. So anyway, the first thought I had politically about this after I was thinking, wow, he was 71, I think, but people that old, that young, that age, just dying out of the blue, man, that's really sad. That's really a hard thing. And after I got over that, my first political thought was, is this going to be worse? Whoever replaces him is the person, because Nancy Mace is already talking about it. She already said, hey, I'd be crazy not to look at Lindsey Graham's seat. Maybe I'll go for that. Sounds like she's saying she will go for it, but it looks like what's happened is, in the interim here, the person who is going to take his place, appointed by the governor, is Darlene Nordone, Lindsey Graham's sister, whom he actually adopted. It's an interesting story. He did not have a silver spoon growing up. He grew up in a home that was attached to a bar, and his father and mother died very close to one another. And he ended up adopting his sister, and Now, Henry McMaster, who, by the way, has a copy of my book. I should mention this: Christianity and Social. No, not that one. Sorry. Social Justice Goes to Church. I got a picture of Henry McMaster holding my book. That's a story for another time. But anyway, Henry McMaster, who has appointed his sister to fulfill his term until January 3rd, 2027. And so that seems to be, and I don't know much about his sister. The article here on the Epoch Times says that, let's see, what does it say about her political views? Nordone has received an outstanding support. Let's see. Seems like everyone's pretty cool with it. So, and that okay, apparently the first female senator from South Carolina. Didn't know that. So I would assume her politics are probably somewhat like her brother's. We'll see how that goes. My hopes aren't like that high with whoever's going to replace him, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. So yeah, that was it for Senator Lindsey Graham. There was a story. I thought this was a good Christian angle to just realize. This is from Premier Christian News. Senator Lindsey Graham, advocate for persecuted Christian, dies age 71. I think a lot of people are giving him the eulogy of like he was a war hawk, he was a foreign policy wonk. I think from a Christian perspective, and this is like the most positive thing you could probably say about Senator Lindsey Graham, is when it comes to the foreign policy, he also advocated for persecuted Christians. And the article goes into this, and this could be part of just his general fascination with foreign policy stuff. But it says that he was a well-known pro-life figure on the issue of abortion, that, let's see, Tony Perkins, also from Family Research Council, said that he was a true leader, a voice for the defenseless. I mean, a lot of people saying nice things. It's interesting how many people in the administration also said nice things, like J.D. Vance and obviously Donald Trump, Stephen Miller. I mean, they all seem to appreciate him by the end. So there's a little bit about Senator Lindsey Graham. And no, I wasn't the biggest fan of him. I wanted him to get primaried so many times in the past. But I think towards the end of his life, he more and more was embodying an America First agenda because of his connection to the president. He could see the writing on the wall. He was going in a direction of being fine with and voting for, actually. I mean, you think about him versus, what was it, Thomas Massey? Like, Graham actually was for the immigration restrictions that Thomas Massey ended up voting against ultimately. And so it's like, you look at, if that's your issue, right? You look at Senator Graham and you're like, well, he was coming through when it actually mattered, when it actually meant something, when the vote actually counted to get something actually done. Senator Graham was there, whereas some others who may have been more conservative on certain things weren't. And at the end of the day, in politics, that's what matters. Are you able to actually achieve something? If you're not able to achieve something, if you're just there to pontificate about your political philosophy and how better it is than everyone else's, you don't really do anything. You don't get much done. But if you're there and you actually achieve tangible, realistic goals, that's the nuts and bolts of politics. That's what actually affects people's lives. And Senator Graham was able to maneuver and do those kinds of things. And we need more people, especially Christians, who are able to do that kind of thing, who are able to maneuver in wise ways, but at the same time, keep their principles, right? That's always what we're looking for. So I don't really have any much more to say about Senator Lindsey Graham. If anyone else wants to chime in, we can talk about it. Let's talk about Patriot Front a little bit. And I do see some comments about Senator Lindsey Graham. I'll get to those. We'll talk about Patriot Front a little bit. So here's some footage. This was, where do I want to start here? Here's some Patriot Front guys marching on the 12th, I guess. Not the 12th, sorry, the 4th. There they are. And you can see they got some American flags. They got American flags. They're flexing on the escalator. I don't know. I know that some people guys are attracted to this. I look at it, and maybe it's because now, I'm the big 37 now. Maybe I'm just getting old. Maybe I'm a boomer, even though I'm a millennial. Maybe I'm just a boomer. It seems kind of cringy to me. I'll explain why I see it that way. I don't have anything like against any of these people individually. I just think the optics of it are kind of strange, and I can understand why someone would be attracted to it. But the symbols they're carrying, if you watch the video, they have American flags. They have American flags with the fascist symbol on it. So let put the fascism on the shelf for a minute. Technically, it's a foreign symbol. So they have a foreign symbol. It's all this Americana stuff, and then the fascist symbol, the symbol that is most connected to fascists in Italy. I don't know, guys. Like I'm not even like a big like when I should I say I'll just say it when I see like Jerusalem cross stuff. You know, if you see it in Jerusalem, like that's one thing. If I see it like plastered everywhere else in America, I don't know, guys. Like we have our own American symbols, like, and we have symbols that have gotten targeted, like the Tea Party symbol or like some of the Southern symbols, like the pine tree. Like we have all these great symbols you can bring back. I don't know if it's the desire for enchantment in foreign places, but I digress. They that's my quibble with the fascist thing. So they're, we're patriots, but they're going to use that. And then the thing that probably is the most like off-putting to just like your average patriotic American is the upside down American flag. There are times for it, but it's supposed to be a symbol of distress. And they're marching around on the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence with this symbol. And with an administration who is obviously much more favorable to a pro-America agenda, who's trying to get things done, who's actually getting some very good, tangible wins. And that's the time they decide we're going to, best case scenario, let's steelman it. We brought our families with us to DC. They're waiting in the car. They're waiting somewhere else. It's a really hot day. We put them, they're in the Smithsonian learning bad history. I don't know, wherever they are. And we're going to go out for the afternoon march with our buddies in Patriot Front with masks on and with upside down American flags and fascist symbols and that kind of thing. During like, if there was one day of the entire year other than Christmas, and like, especially like a patriotic celebration, if there was one day the entire year when you're expected to be with your family, because that's the American tradition, to be eating American food, to be smelling American smells, to be shooting off American fireworks, to be home, to be with friends, with family, to be celebrating the positive things. That's what you do on a birthday, right? You don't go to a birthday party and you tell the person that's having the party, you're just a terrible person and you're in trouble. No, you celebrate all the good things of it. Like that's the one day of the year that you would do that for America would be, I don't know, the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Like, even if you disagreed with the direction of American politics, that would be the one day to suspend that and say, we're celebrating our heritage. I'm going to be with the family. And that was the day they thought, this will be a good spectacle for the cameras. And so to me, that alone, I'm just like, like, even if the message was all right, which I have some disagreements with the message, which I'll talk about in a moment, but even if everything else was good about it, you're already starting off kind of on the wrong foot. You're creating what I would call like a counter institution, right? So revolutionaries do this all the time. We're used to left wingers doing this. I think what the organizers of Patriot Front want to do is they want to have a organization that embeds itself in community politics and helps with the formation of men and that kind of thing. But when you do a spectacle like this, that's out of step with what all the other real patriots are doing. I'm not saying not all these people are real patriots, but like the vast majority of people in the country who, like, on that day are celebrating, you're setting up a membership, an identity, a structure, an organization that is outside of what the rest of society is doing to actually celebrate and to actually be patriotic on that day. You're saying, like, we have a different way. Come be with us. Come join our club. Come be part of this. We got uniforms that make us all look the same. We've got these masks, which I think there's an intimidation factor with that. And part of the reason I think that is there are guys like Michael Spangler, for example, who are in Patriot Front that are like, at least that's what I saw over social media a few days ago. He says all kinds of stuff that is like far worse than what he said on camera to Patriot Front, but then he wears a mask when he's at, like, what's the point? Like, why bother? Right. Well, I just sense that there's a certain intimidation factor with that. Like, you don't know who these people are, and that anonymity creates opportunity for doing things that might be deemed, I was going to say illegal. They're all against doing illegal things. That's what they say. But like what does it communicate? Like we don't want people to see what we're doing because there's something bad about it. There's something that we could get punished for by doing this, right? There's either a message that is so bad that we have to cover ourselves up to protect ourselves, or like we're going to do things, we're going to do deeds that are so negative to society that we have to wear this to protect ourselves. I just see this as something you see with a lot of different groups when they're engaged in activity where they want anonymity because there'll be repercussions. So it doesn't communicate on that particular day American anything really, in my mind. It's other than the colors. And yes, I watched the speech from Thomas Rousseau. In fact, I just listened to a 2-hour podcast with Thomas Rousseau, the founder, just because I wanted to understand exactly what they're about. And yeah, here, I'll show you. Actually, there were accusations online during the time that, oh, they're a bunch of feds. Here's Mike Lee saying that, brought to you by leftists who don't know that patriots don't wear masks. Well, obviously patriots do wear masks at times. There are times for anonymity. There are times for risking yourself because you want to do something for the greater good, do something for your society. Usually it's a daring thing that has to be done to save your civilization or something. And that's probably how they see themselves. I don't think the vast majority of people watching that see it that way, but that's probably how they see themselves. Like we're the Boston Tea Party or something, right? Like we're the Sons of Liberty, and we're doing like really high-end things. We're really important people. That's why we have to do this. When they're marching around with flags and symbols, and really a protest message on the one day you probably wouldn't do that, right? Like the one day not to protest America would probably be the 4th of July. Laura Ingraham, same thing. I call it fake. Looks more like Antifa costume. Look, I think these guys are wrong. I thought that from the beginning. I know there's people online saying like, oh, I thought at first these guys were somehow like a Fed operation. I never thought that about them. And part of the reason I never thought that about them, thought that was because I know there's a market for this. I know there are guys who would sign up for this. And I also saw guys like Andrew Torba online when this first happened, like in 2021, when they were marching around. He was saying it wasn't feds. And I'm like, I feel like Andrew Torba would probably know. He would probably have those connections. So I've never really bought that. I think, is it a cope? I think it's kind of like older folks when they hear about the SPLC funding hate groups and they think, oh, it's just all fake. It's all AstroTurf. There's obviously no one's actually doing this stuff. Well, no, there are some people that are in the groups that the SPLC hates or says they hate. It's not all just the left. Not every enemy is your villain of choice, which is, unfortunately, a lot of boomers have done this with communism, where it was like always the Russians, and then it's always the Chinese, it's always Soros. Like they have like this very short list of villains, and everything becomes part of that. And it's like, well, those are villains, but and a lot of like the Zoomer, more millennials, I would say, everything is like, if it's Israel, it's villain. And if it's Jewish, it's villain. Like it sort of boxes you into these things. So I think that's probably what's going on there. But yeah, Laura Ingraham, Mike Lee, I disagree. I think this is real. But yes, are there feds who are probably members? I would have no doubt that there's feds who are probably part of an organization like this. Now, why would that be? Because of that they've engaged in, right? So there have been things like defacing like the Arthur Ashe mural. They vandalized the Arthur Ashe mural, which to me, that's just, I mean, he was a famous golfer, I think, who ended up advocating like for AIDS research and that kind of stuff, because he didn't contract it through homosexuality or sexual stuff. It was through, I think, I don't know if it was a blood transfusion, whatever it was. He ended up contracting it. But yeah, to go to somewhere like that and just deface it, probably not the wisest thing. To put your symbols all over it, And that's the other thing. Like it's not like an American symbol, it's their brand, right? That's what they do. They're gaining recruits by putting their brand on there. So the message is the organization in a way, like join the organization. Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff like that. So in fact, there's a video they put out. I thought this was kind of interesting, like where they're kind of proud of doing this stuff. Here they are, just putting their symbols on stuff in multiple states across the country. There's at one point in this montage of police officers asking them why they're on an overpass spray painting it, which to me is like, I associate this kind of behavior. Yeah, here they are, like changing the construction site warning sign or whatever to say reclaim America. Anyway, this is the kind of stuff I would associate with more urban youth, right? More like probably mostly demographics would be like black and brown people who, I see the train come by my house all the time with gang symbols on it, right? And it's because this goes into New York City and Albany. It's probably where it's happening. That's what I associate with this stuff. Like under the cover of night, we're gonna go out and we're just gonna like put our stuff on things. Yeah, I mean, is this what true patriots do? Is this how we take back our country? Is this really the message? I think this is it's more coded, not the white nationalism I think they're going for, in my opinion. But let's see, do I have anything more? I just wanted to show this, I guess, real quick, and then I'll just comment on the philosophy of the organization. So these are some intakes from Patriot Front, some this is just a tip of the iceberg, but some leaked data from people who are joining the organization and their vetting process. So here's one person. He has always had a passion for outspoken ideology, though through high school was fairly melancholy. But when he started paying taxes, he really moved forward. When he started in the military, he read Beyond Good and Evil. Okay, so it goes through like here he read Mein Kampf. There you go. And he's labels himself a National Socialist, raised Christian, but says he's not sure if he can be Christian because he's dabbled in hedonism and has always put his race first. I'm hearing this more and more that like, oh, Christianity with its forgiveness, with like its universal quality, we choose our race first, not Christianity. Or you have to like morph Christianity to make it identitarian around race. Here's another one, political ideologies, National Socialism, felt lost. Another person who felt lost after, 2017. I don't know. A lot of these people, if you read them, they seem like deracinated individuals looking for purpose. I'm just going to be honest. That's just how I see it. I've read a bunch of these. These are just the ones that I was going to feature on here, but was with the Proud Boys before this, single father. Okay, so National Socialism keeps coming up. Let's see. Hitler does not sound crazy or like a raving madman. Okay. Here's a chat that was leaked from Patriot Front. This is in 2000, I think, 22. If you remember anything from the first document I sent you on theology, the main point was that man fulfills his relationship with the Creator by embodying instinctual values that he has in common with the Creator. And so he starts talking about these values, and then he gives these qualities, and he says authenticity, vitality, goodness, chivalry, hierarchical supremacy, manifest destiny, eternal war. And these are supposed to categorically replace the current system of values, which are equality, egalitarianism, and listen to these: pity, mercy, masochism, okay, weakness, guilt, and listen to the last one, unconditional love. Interesting. Okay. For example, here, all right, so where there's sort of a message of strength that you get when you start reading these leaked intakes and chat messages and so forth. Another person, political ideology, fascist, religion, non-existent. Let's see, felt religious beliefs were at odds with his politics, so left Catholicism. He read the book on National Socialism and seems to like that. So that's just a sampling of the kind of stuff that you'll see when you start doing the deep dive. There was a group, I think it was called Vanguard America. that went to Charlottesville, and Thomas Rousseau, who started Patriot Front, came out of that. And they did have more neo-Nazi ideological beliefs. And I found, I might do a paper on this. A lot of people today seem to be confused about what neo-Nazi ideology is. And I don't want to like leave something out, but like if you're trying to give like the thumbnail sketch, it would be like, I guess you could say genetic determinism, and an element of racial supremacy linked to that, and also like a Volkish mysticism, you could say, linked to that. Jewish conspiracy, I think, would be the second pillar, if you wanted to call that. And then the third one, and this is the one that I think really becomes the debatable issue as to whether or not these guys who are more neo-Nazi ideologues are on the right, or what does it mean to be on the right? Are they on the American right? Is big government, totalitarianism. They tend to be consolidators. They tend to be okay with socialism, because that's what National Socialism, as the name implies, actually means. So that's where it springs from. Now, I listened to this 2-hour video, 2-hour audio thing with, oh my goodness, I was like bumping, just like knocking my head, right? Because it was Jake Shields. That's the first and the last time I'll ever listen to Jake Shields, I think. I tried to maintain, I took vitamins, I tried to maintain my cognitive functions as I listened. I'll have to say this, though. Thomas Rousseau, who Jake Shields was interviewing, Thomas Rousseau is actually a very effective communicator. He's bright. He's young. He's, I would say, very calm, cool, collected. I was kind of impressed with, like, I don't think people expect to find that person when they're trying to examine Patriot Front, given the bad rap it has in the media and so forth. So here are a couple things, though, I noticed. All right. The first thing is he laments the deracination of Americans, and he thinks of America as an ethnicity, and it's white. So Americans are white. That's their ethnicity. This country was made for white people. That creates some problems, in my opinion, both pragmatic political problems and just historical problems. But I'll get back to that. He laments deracination, right? Like, we're disconnected from our roots. I lament that too, by the way, very much so. And he says finding your identity in sports, like cheering for teams instead of finding it in your family and where you live, like that's a really big giveaway. That's a problem. You see when people are big for the Green Bay Packers, what they're actually substituting. And my first thought was, but dude, aren't you kind of doing that? Like, with you started an organization that is posturing itself against the status quo in America, and you felt the need that you needed this organization to accomplish something that wasn't being done, apparently, right? I'm not against organizations, obviously. I think we need voluntary associations and so forth. But when the optics of it, when the message of it is, this place is failing, it's really bad. On the 4th of July, upside down flags, fascist symbols. We're not with our families right now. We're telling you how America's become crummy. You are very much posturing yourself as an alternative or a counter organization, a revolutionary organization. You like, there needs to be massive change at a fundamental level, and Trump's not addressing this. Like, so what's the thing, right? Like, so one of the things he talks about is like how democracy's failed, how this country, the demographics are so off. And in order to get to, and he doesn't quite come out and say this, but the critiques he's making, I think, drives the solutions. If you want a solution, it is going to take the biggest drastic measures that I don't think are even, they're not possible in this environment. It's just like, if you wanted to get America back to, it's just whites here. And that's even like kind of a stretch historically, because obviously you have all these other people groups who weren't majorities or anything, tolerated minorities mostly, but a lot of white people were tolerated minorities. So, I mean, I've conceived of it this way. I think this is the right way to conceive of it. And I talk about this in my book, Against the Waves. It's Anglo-Protestant. You got different Anglo groups who are here with tolerated minorities. You have some Germans, you have some Jewish people. You even have like Amish people who are German, but they're very different. You have Quakers who are a little different, right? You have these different groups. You have a few Catholics, and they don't get to decide the direction of the country. The country is, the decisions that are being made are by Protestants from this island in off the coast of continental Europe. That's what America was. That's what the whole project was, essentially. And we have different immigrant groups who come over at various times, some of them with more compatibility than others. And so this is a bit of a prudential thing. But if, like, at one time in this interview, Thomas Rousseau, he talks about, hey, there is no black signers of the Declaration of Independence. It's for ourselves and our posterity. That's the Constitution. But he says, and I'm thinking, but there are no Italians. You know, his name's Rousseau. He's probably French. Like, I'm just saying, like, this is highly selective, and it's trying to put a gate up, trying to say it's for whites only, and where that wasn't even reflective in the founding, but that's what we're going to say now, okay? And maybe they'll use things like the Immigration Acts and stuff to try to justify it, but they have to read those things anachronistically to some extent. Okay, so that's the metaphysics of it. That's the belief, the ontological belief about what American ethnicity is. They don't see it like I see it as an Anglo-Protestant core with multiple nations, because America is an empire. They see it as one ethnicity. So I think, and he didn't quite come out and say this, but he was critiquing democracy and stuff, and I'm like, this is gonna lend itself to a more totalitarian kind of thing, right? This is gonna be something different than the traditional conservative American self-government, federalist, localist kind of instincts. I really have no doubt of that. I could read between the lines, and I could see where it was going. And if someone wants to do more deep diving, I'm sure they'll find what I'm talking about. But he wants to coalesce things around race. It's not really religion. Religion comes up as, well, our people have been traditionally Christian, but there's pagans in the organization, as I just showed you. There's atheists. In fact, Thomas Rousseau himself, unless he's had a conversion, I don't think he is a Christian. So the interesting thing to me is, like, there's sort of I don't know if it's liberalism, but there's more of a liberality when it comes to religion. You can be all these different faith commitments and be part of Patriot Front as long as you're white, basically. So with very few exceptions to that. So in my mind, the whole thing comes down to, for them, like, I love part of some of the things they're doing. Like, I love the fact that he's talking about, we need physical fitness. We need men's groups. We need, like, he's right about some of those things. We actually do have those things, and they need to be reinvigorated. But you need to be the organization who's presenting at the patriotic ceremony, you know, like the Boy Scouts or whatever. Like, you need to be the organization that makes that the goal. We're gonna try to get actual civic involvement, so that people actually see us as leaders. They're not afraid of us. They see us as leaders. That's how the committees of correspondence worked during the War for American Independence. They became the de facto government because they represented the people. They were the people who had good standing in society, who were civic leaders, were behind it. That's how you actually, I think, get more momentum. That's really involving yourself in the political process. That's what we need more of, in my estimation. So if they really are doing charitable things, if they really are doing mail formation, and let's just steel man it and say they're doing the best job on all those things, which I would be skeptical of, but let's just say it's true. If that's true, then you could probably do those things without having to kind of get weird, which is, I think they're just attracting weirdos. That's the bottom line. Like, those are a lot of the people who are kind of already have an oppositional posture to the rest of society, are going to be the ones who want to join this kind of thing. That's what reading those intakes seem to tell you. And what you need are stable, healthy people who are integrated into society, who have the respect of the people in their communities, at least on some level, who are trying to do constructive things that actually move the political needle. Because what happens with an organization like this is all the cameras come out, and predictably, what happened on July 4th, they started blaming Donald Trump. The left-wing media says, look at Trump's America. Look what's going on here. They know it's a liability. They know that this is bad for the right, that this is something, it's not just something that divides the right. It's something that they can use to show people who aren't as politically astute, or Americans who are more on the moderate side or even slightly liberal, who might have voted for Trump because of certain issues, they can show them this and say, isn't this scary? And Patriot Front gains access to more membership. They grow their organization because of this symbiotic relationship they have with the media. But I'm not into growing an organization. I'm fine with growing organizations. I think it's great to grow an organization, but that's not the main goal, right? The main goal of a political organization is politics. It's actually the restoration of the country, and the organization serves that. If the country does worse, if you're becoming a liability to the guys who actually can win at real politics, but your organization flourishes because of its oppositional stance, then I think it's a loss. That's how I view it. All right. So that's really all I'm going to say. There's probably more I could say about it, but one final thing I'll say that just sort of reinforced to me this idea that they are kind of liabilities is one of the things that, this is a quote from Thomas Rousseau in the interview I listened to. People say vote your conscience, and sometimes that's not to vote. And he's talking in the context, he's talking about Donald Trump. And I'm like, sometimes that's not to vote. Because Jake Shields is like, I didn't vote for Trump. And he's like, oh, yeah, sometimes that's not to vote, right? Sometimes you got to do the right thing. Well, it's not how politics works, okay? Politics is a machine. It's not a church. It is an organism for accomplishing social tasks and gaining a favorable condition for the life that you seek, the vision of the good. For Christians, we have a very specific vision of the good. And because we are evangelicals are like 44% of the country, that means on a national level, we form coalitions with others to get certain things done. You don't really have an option not to do it. If every vote is a conscience vote and everything has to measure up to perfectibility, then politics ends, the left wins. That's how I see it. So I'm sure there'll be all sorts of ideas about this and cries of outrage and so forth. But you wanted my opinion, some of you, and you got my opinion on it. There you go. I'm sure more can be said. Let's talk a little bit about some politics. We're going to get to Jay Dyer. Do I want to do that now? No, I don't think so. I think I'm going to do a little bit of politics here. Let's talk about this story. This is kind of interesting to me. Why trans migration to blue states is becoming a budget crisis. And this is the Christian Post. And it says trans people are fleeing red states for Seattle and the city can't keep up. It's an article in the Washington Post it's citing. And it says that it suggests the story that 100,000 trans adults left red states in the 6 months following the 2024 election, with another 1.2 million reportedly considering relocating to states that actively affirm trans policies. Now, I have to say something here. Okay, so the idea is that these trans people create a tax burden when they go into these places because of the medical care that they require. There's expansive abortion policies they're taking advantage of. There's a cost to immorality. That's the bottom line. This is very interesting to me because I've noticed during Pride Month, it doesn't seem like it was a few years ago. It's not as exaggerated. And I do wonder, is part of that because in the more red areas or even moderate areas, like there's been a migration, like the people who are more on board, like really down for the socialist, they call it gay race communism cause. They actually went to Portland and Seattle. If that's true, then you contact me if you're in Portland or Seattle. Maybe I was just there, but I didn't really have time to walk around. Maybe leave a comment on this video. Let me know if that's the truth in Portland and Seattle and San Francisco. Are you noticing more people coming in? If that's true, that's fascinating. And it does, I think, expose the reality of the connection that exists between morality, social policies, social conservatism, and fiscal responsibility, fiscal conservatism. These things have always been connected. Mike Huckabee used to make this point all the time. I think even Ted Cruz made this point when he was running for office, that look, these things are connected. And you got these libertarian types who want to disconnect them and say, no, I'm all for, you can do whatever you want in sexuality, with your body, quote unquote, which means killing babies apparently. But I just want lower taxes and I want to do math right. Well, your math isn't going to work if you push for this immorality. That's the point. And I think that's a very interesting story to kind of expose that. American Reformer published an article by Mike Sabo, Inside the Smithsonian's War on American History. By the way, this is like one of my top things. I love the fact that the Trump administration is doing this. I mean, we're the Save America Act they're pushing right now. They're going after the H-1Bs. They're what's the other thing? There's the Attorney General. They're trying to gear up for a fight to confirm, hopefully, this Attorney General that we have that actually is trying to lock people up. I mean, there's great things happening here. And one of the things for me, because my heartbeat is history of the American Republic specifically, is that the White House Domestic Policy Council published Saving America's Story, How Ideological Capture at the Smithsonian Institution's National Museum of American History Erases Our Heritage. I thought this was great. And notice he's saying our heritage, right? This is the Americans who care about the founding of this country, the deprivation, the struggle, the wars, the ideals, all of it. They are being, I'll just say, discriminated against, right? They are being themselves deprived of being able to tell the story that they should be able to tell to their own children. In the words of the museum's director, Anthea Hartig, the Smithsonian aims to reframe the traditional celebratory narrative of the U.S. history. Now, transform the national historical narrative. Now, here's one of the things, like coming off the Patriot Front discussion here, I'm sensitive to this because I see the revolutionary instinct to let's reframe everything. Like everything you learned was all wrong. I'm going to like come in and right. Like I've seen that from the left for a long time. And it's from the left, it's like you're celebrating, but we're doom and gloom. That's how it always is. It's like you think it's all good. Oh, it's not sunshine and roses. I got this, a full dose of this in college. I remember in community college when I first started, and then I transferred to a 4-year institution. But like my first class that I ever took on American history, I thought to myself, it's a miracle anyone comes out of here and is still conservative if they believe anything that these people are telling them. Because what they're telling them is you live in an awful place. And you live in an awful place because it is populated by awful people who had awful ancestors with awful ideas and awful religion. Everything's awful. And that's the reason you can't get ahead. That's the reason you're a victim. That's the reason that it's so hard for you financially. It would be so easy for you. We'd be living in paradise if you simply would cast off all these antiquated assumptions and fire all these people conserving tradition. We would have a paradise. And it's totally out of step with the 4th of July celebration. I mean, in fact, those are the holidays where I'm like, if you're a leftist, like, what do you even do, right? I remember the speech from, who is it? A black man on the 4th of July, something like that. Why can't I remember the guy's name? He has all the hair. Okay. What to a slave is the 4th of July? Okay, I was close. Frederick Douglass. Why did I forget his name? Anyway, Frederick Douglass. And the left always cites him. The evangelical leftists always cited him. They're always like, the black people, because of slavery, they have nothing to celebrate on this holiday. And it's like, oh, okay, be a party pooper on the 4th of July. And I think that's partially how I viewed Patriot Front with that sort of gimmick. Like, what, on the 4th of July of all, like, come on, like, go shoot off some fireworks today. This is the day to do it. So the Smithsonian is engaged in this, like, hey, we got to stop the celebration. The U.S. history is serious, guys. It's pretty bad. And the Museum of American History would tell the story of American national progress and cement America's progress for citizens and foreigners alike. That was 1955. Now you can see how far we've come from there. So they've strayed from their roots of what their purpose is as an organism, as a museum, as a series of museums, actually. And Christianity is framed as being mostly an instrument of conquest, exclusion, or cultural erasure, while the constructive role of Christian belief and Christian institutions in shaping the nation and its freedoms receive scant, if any, attention. White, male, and Christian Americans are regularly denigrated as the alleged embodiment of oppressive power structures. Listen, the left has a villains list. Christianity is at the top of that. European civilization is the threat, I think, because it's affected by Christianity and embodies Christian ideas. That's a problem. So white people, males, obviously, because they're domineering and testosterone is evil. These are all very, very, very bad people. And what we need are some minority females who are pagans, apparently, to run the country in order for things to be actually equitable and fair. That's the left's story. That's the narrative, right? We're talking about narratives. What's the narrative you believe about your national origin, right? The Bible has examples of where, think of Absalom, right? Where narratives were important. Absalom has his narrative about, look, all your complaints are justified. David's being unfair to you. I'll give you a better deal. Aaron, right? He's got his own narrative about like, oh, we threw the gold in and out came this, right? These are very minor positions, but there's larger ones. How about like Ishmael and Isaac? Two different narratives. They both come from the same dad and two completely different civilizations and religions, and they are fighting each other to this day for control over the same land where it all started, where the genesis of all this happened and originated. And the Muslims, the sons of, I should say the Arabs, right? Because there's Muslims who aren't Arabs. So the Arab Muslims, the people who trace back to Ishmael, they have their own story about what actually happened between Isaac and Abraham. And the Jewish people and the Christians, by the way, both together have their own story because they both have the Old Testament. That's their record. So they have their story about what transpired between Isaac and Abraham and how Isaac was the son of the promise. It's a narrative war. Now it spills over into bullets, but we're having something like that happen on America's shores. It's a narrative war. We've always had narrative wars, but it affects identity, who we are as a people. That's why it's important. And that affects politics directly. Are we a Christian people? Are we a European people in the sense that we embody a Western civilization, a very particular part of Western civilization called Anglo-Protestant or Anglo-Saxon civilization? What are we exactly? Like what is an American? That's what I think people are fighting about. And that is probably the biggest question. Are we even a nation or are we an empire? What's the baseline to get into this and to become a citizen and to consider yourself to be an American, right? One of the reasons that I did this album, Heritage, was because some of this is easier to do in art than it is to explain. Although you do need to explain because you do need policies and so forth. But go check out my album, Heritage, right? I have even a song, Heritage American, and there's a bunch of other stuff on there because America is a story. Just like the Bible talks about the Jewish people or the Israelites, I should say, the children of Israel, and their coming out of Egypt and the judges and the kingdom and the diaspora, like the divided kingdom, all of that is a story that's being told with certain main characters, with certain people and their descendants who remain in the story and other characters come in and out. It is a narrative. That story gives you foundation. It gives you, if you are part of the story, an understanding of what your duties are, what your responsibilities are, who you are as a person. If you don't have any of that, if you're just an economic zone, if you're just an idea, then there's nothing to it. And if you reduce it the other way, if you're like, well, it's just DNA or something, it's not religion, it's not shared experience, it's not necessarily, it's not the heritage in the fullest sense of the word. It really comes down to just lineage or whatever. Like, it's not just that. It's not just any of those things. It's a full body. It's a full holistic kind of thing. That's why it's hard to explain sometimes to people, because they want to fixate on one aspect of it and then make that like the thing. When there's often exceptions, and oftentimes shared experience can even overcome, at least for like tolerated minorities, or just minorities in general, like it can overcome and it can be the basis for integration. Even if this is a bit of a complicated thing, but it's not. It's complicated to map out, perhaps, because you're finding all these strands. Like, well, what do Americans eat? What do Americans do? What are their pastimes? What they like? Baseball, okay. When you see it, you know it, though. When you see a Southerner, you know it's a Southerner. How do you know, John? Is it like, I'm not going to give you the 10 points. You know it when you see it, right? Europeans, people in other countries, they know when they see an American. They just know it instinctively. It is somewhat instinctual. And that's what I try to convey is like, this is, maybe it seems complicated trying to explain it. It's something that we all recognize when we see it, though. And where was I? I totally got off. The Smithsonian's doing bad things. Okay. The Smithsonian has made it their mission to deconstruct America. That's the bottom line. America's a crummy place, and we should all apparently be upset about that. So the Trump administration going after the Smithsonian, exposing them, I voted for this. Federal judge blocks Michigan from forcing pro-life groups to hire pro-choice employees. So this is a great win in the state of Michigan. It seems like kind of a duh thing, right? But I think there was another case recently, I want to say New Jersey, maybe, or Pennsylvania, where it was a very similar thing where it was because of Biden's Justice Department. They were trying to force discrimination lawsuits against pro-life orgs for not hiring people that disagreed with their particular beliefs. And I think that's just crazy, but we're having a rollback of some of this, and I'm really glad for that. All right, Citizen Vigilante. By the way, this is an article from TruthScript. Go to TruthScript. There you go. TruthScript.com. Scroll to the bottom. Click on that donate tab. It's a 501c3, and you can click on the publish tab, which is right there, and you can publish with us. Several good articles that are out right now. I wanted to focus on this one, but there's one on debt stewardship and the obligation you cannot see, encouragement for parents. I mean, it's a lot of stuff that is just very helpful for Christians trying to live their everyday, normal Christian life, as you often do. And the article that I want to focus on is Citizen Vigilante, Trolling or Bait by Roy Tempe. So Roy Tempe watched this movie that Elon Musk had made for free. I haven't watched it. I think my brother watched it. He was telling me a little bit about it. But it's kind of apparently like he compares it to Death Wish. But my brother was saying like it's kind of like Liam Neeson and this whole genre of like sort of there's a breakdown in law and order, and so like the citizen vigilante has to go out there and has to do the to do justice apparently. So citizen vigilante is essentially revenge porn with, by the way, a very unnecessary explicit scene in a brothel. So I guess there's actual porn. The movie is structured with intermittent cuts to the main character being interviewed, with him providing video explanations for his actions. So it's basically a guy who goes and kills a bunch of people because of a gang rape that took place in Britain. Not a far-fetched thing to imagine, a gang rape in Britain, unfortunately. And I mean, that it's worse than anything in the Epstein files, Roy Tempe says. And yeah, if you read that, it's insane. It's insane what's going on in the UK. And so in the absence of government doing anything, you get citizen vigilante. He's going to come out. He's going to do the right thing. But he says in the review, he says, my concern is that this film may tempt some to become vigilantes, an understandable reaction to much of the goings on across the pond. And he says some woke jurisdictions in the USA are likewise protecting oppressed offenders. What's the biblical response? He says, there's a quote from the main character, "You are a democracy. These people did not vote for this." This is a big problem with the film. There are no moral absolutes. The immigrant violence is wrong because nobody voted for it. Okay, well, that's a good point. Contrast that with Romans 12 that says, avenge yourselves not, but wait for the wrath of God. Vengeance is mine, I'll repay. And the government is God's minister to execute. So this is part of the problem. And I've said this before. Look, and he talks about the lesser magistrate doctrine. It's actually a really good article. Good job, Roy Tempe. Here's the thing. Injustice is happening, right? In the Anglo Saxon heritage, you have Robin Hood, right? When the Normans were getting off track, Robin Hood comes in. You have the character who operates outside the law, but he has the full faith of the people that he supposedly represents. There's this character that exists, this archetypal character. It's a last resort when you get to that point. And really how you should categorize that point when you get to that point is the government is sort of like an American Revolution argument, but the government has made war on the people. They are not functioning as the government ought to function. Therefore, they have given up on their duty, and they should no longer be considered the government. It's like if you're in a marriage and or you're in a family, and let's say the dad just leaves, won't do anything, is off with another woman, has another family. Like, at what point do you say, like, well, I guess you're gone? Like, you're not really you're not acting like a husband anymore or a dad. So when the government abandons its post and someone else comes up and fulfills that post and has the vote of confidence from the people, whether that's through an actual voting process or that's just sort of how it happens organically, then you have a new government and you have competing governments perhaps in the struggle. That's how to view it. Vigilante's different. A vigilante is someone who does not have any representative body behind him. He's kind of a lone wolf. He's outside the system and he's just going to go do justice in his own eyes. That's what the Bible condemns, right? So this is the problem with those fever dreams, and you are going to have more people probably do that kind of thing. Now, that is different than a defensive situation where you're a father and your daughter, let's say, is getting attacked, and you're going to, obviously, that's a different scenario. But I'm talking about like when it comes to the job of the government to do the trial and the execution of justice. That's not your job. That's the government's job. You're not the government. Then there's a problem. You either have to become the government, you either run for office, you do whatever you can to get involved with the government, or if it's just so corrupt, there is no government. I think that's the time when you start looking at, can we do an organization that, if you want to call it a counter institution, because it's counter the government, okay. But it's going to be one that represents the people. It's going to be one that is actually has the full faith and credit of the people in the community. That is because it rises from the community. It's the people in the community who are doing this. It has the backing of influential leaders in the community, that kind of thing. So that's I think the biblical way to try to look at something like that. Because yes, the doctrine of the lesser magistrate is very true. And I think if we had more lesser magistrates who had backbones, who were willing to enforce justice when those above them are unwilling to, then it would make, well, let's just say there might be more controversies, but there would be a lot more attention given to real problems, and there'd probably be more momentum in fixing those problems. But most bureaucrats just want to collect their pay, and then, that's it. Okay, let's talk about some religious news here. The magnificent. I'm looking at the Pope and I'm thinking magnificent. The magnificent irrelevance of Pope Leo's encyclical. All right. The newly elected Pope chooses their names. They signal continuity and ambition. Pope Leo invoked Pope Leo the 13th. And it was unmistakable what his intent was, because Leo the 13th did the 1891 encyclical Rerum Novarum, which I've talked about before. That's the social justice one. And he inaugurated modern Catholic social teaching. So the current Leo the 14th, he has a new encyclical, Magnifica Humanitas, and it attempts an even more ambitious task, a synthesis of more than a century of Catholic reflection on economics, politics, theology, and the social order. The document contains moments of genuine insight. Let's skip ahead to the bad stuff. I don't have a lot of time, so that's why I'm doing that. Okay, the Pope is less thoughtful on his treatment of artificial intelligence. He recognizes AI's transformative potential and the dangers posed by the systems that increasingly mediate human judgment. These warnings about technological power deserve careful attention. And by the way, if I didn't mention it, this is from Chronicles magazine. Despite the occasional strengths of this encyclical, ultimately it rests on a flawed diagnosis of the modern world. As a result, its prescriptions remain irrelevant. Pope Leo's argument is that humanity lacks a shared moral framework. Individuals, corporations, and nation states pursue competing interests, generating conflict, inequality, exploitation, and social fragmentation. Neither capitalism nor socialism has succeeded in creating a just social order. Artificial intelligence threatens to deepen these issues. His solution is humanity needs a universal moral authority capable of guiding economic and political life toward a common good. So that sounds like a one world government. Leo envisions a global moral consensus. Oh yeah. So the UN is going to do this, right? Informed by natural law and nurtured by institutions that transcend national and economic interests, the Roman Catholic Church, unsurprisingly, is presented as a principal custodian of this vision. Yet Leo fails to note the failures of the church and also the fact that RC commands the loyalty of only about half of today's Christians. His words are worth debating. All right. So it goes into Catholic social thought a little bit and sort of some of the critiques of that. But John Paul recognized entrepreneurship, initiative, cooperation, and productive risk-taking as legitimate sources of wealth creation. Remember, I mean, he's often linked to Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, anti-communism. Leo, on the other hand, appears less willing to embrace this dimension of modern life. Like many of his predecessors, he views markets primarily through the lens of inequality and exploitation. So markets are bad. So let's just cut through it. Pope Leo is kind of a commie. I think Daniel McCarthy's writing this. He's more careful, but he even says he compares him to Marx. Like Marx, he often interprets economic life through frameworks inherited from earlier agrarian industrial societies. Yet contemporary wealth is increasingly generated through knowledge, innovation, and networks of voluntary cooperation. Okay. So the interesting thing about this is I've had Daniel McCarthy on the program. Daniel McCarthy is Catholic. He is Catholic. So he just thinks this is a big nothing burger and that Pope Leo is kind of a commie. And I would agree with them. And I'm glad the Catholics can see that, at least some of them. I don't know what they do with that. Like, what do you do when apparently they stay Catholic? But we had this whole thing with, I remember I had a trad cat once, traditional Catholic, right, who liked Latin Mass and the whole 9 yards. And he came up to me and he said, because at the time it was Pope Francis. And I was like, listen, I know we're both conservatives here, but Pope Francis, man, like J.D. Greer says something dumb, I don't have to listen to it. He has no ecclesiastical authority. When the Pope says something, that's kind of a bigger deal. And I know he's not speaking ex cathedra, but even without that, he sets the direction for the entire church. And he could speak ex cathedra any day and say something really dumb. What are you going to do when that happens? And he looked at me and he said, if you think that Pope Francis is the real Pope. So he thought Benedict was the real Pope. And that Benedict. So I'm like, oh man. So like, we don't even know. So like, we don't even have, if that's true, that means the entire enterprise has been corrupted. And like, I don't know, why don't you have a reformation or something? Well, now you got Pope Leo. And I know there are a lot of trad cats really excited about that. Pope Leo is going to be the guy. He is different. Look at him on the issue of, I think it was abortion. Look at him on abortion. And then sure enough, like 2 seconds into his reign as the Pope, he is already counter-signaling Donald Trump on immigration. So not a huge improvement. Catholics, conservative Catholics, you are always welcome. If you, of course, you have to theologically change some things. But if you want to get back to the Bible and justification by faith and dump some of the Mariology, you are welcome in the Protestant church. I am just saying. And you can be conservative and you don't have to be embarrassed by your Pope. Buffalo, New York, megachurch pastor pleads guilty to child abuse. So this is a story that's kind of more local to me. Local as in like what, 5-6 hours away. But there are people who are patrons who support me. By the way, you can support me too if you want to go to patreon.com/Jon Harris podcast. And they live in this area. And this is apparently like a big deal. 47-year-old John Camardo pleaded guilty to 1 count of second-degree rape and 1 count of related sexual conduct against a child. So it's really sad to me. It's pedophilia stuff. And you have a pastor of a megachurch who has pled guilty to this. And I have to say, you can look at what the left is doing in politics. You can look at even the clownish right guys, the guys who think they're really right wing, but they're just saying stupid stuff. You can look at anything politics, and people who try to represent Christianity or try to oppose Christianity. I'm struggling. I don't think I can think of any. I can't think of anything worse to the reputation of the church when its own leaders, when pastors are caught up in this kind of egregious sin. When you have pastors who have the title, who are found out for having an adulterous affair or fornicating or are engaging in this and pedophilia and sexual depravity. When you find out someone, while they are a pastor, when they are keeping the souls of the people in their congregation, are doing these kinds of things, it's a devastating thing. It's a horrible thing for the church. When you see a pastor who embezzles money, that's bad enough. This is worse. This is just, I pray for this church. Pray for this. What's the name of the church? It must say The Chapel. Okay, it's called The Chapel. Pray for The Chapel in Buffalo, New York, and that the Lord would use this in some way. I think the Lord sifts as well. So the Lord may be just sifting the people who need to be sifted and exposing them. Investigators probing possible arson in a blaze that tore through landmarked 173-year-old New York City church. This is from the New York Post. This is, I believe, the third. There's been like 3 churches that have been burned. One of them, or attempted burning. 2 of them actually burned. One is arson that we have on camera, but this is another one. 173-year-old church and suspected of arson. And I'll just tell you, the people in New York who are more conservative are... They already think, I'm just telling you, this is what's in the water here, that this is Mamdani. Not him personally, like not that he's doing the arson, but it's his New York. He is pro-Muslim. He is apparently, as we saw the other day from these maps that he created, he left out Little Italy, and there's supposed to be all the minorities or immigrants, but he left out Little Italy. He left out the Jewish section. That's who he is. He is a communist, basically, and he encourages Islam. And where else have we seen Muslims committing acts of arson? In Europe, especially in places like France. So people are already saying, look, that kind of activity is starting in New York City. And if that's true, which it very well may be, America's foremost city being taken over in that way, that is not a good thing. That is a very, very, very bad thing for the country as a whole, not just for New York City. Well, I'm going to save the EO stuff for the end. Let's talk about Nigeria real quick here. After school children's rescue in Oyo, fresh middle belt attacks killed 27 across Nigeria. This is from truthnigeria.com. Release of 44 abducted pupils and teachers in Southwest Nigeria is overshadowed by Fulani militia attacks in Benau and Plateau, leaving at least 27 dead in a single weekend. Man. And this is just one atrocity after another. And it's radical Islam. That's who's doing it. That's who always, I don't want to say always, but I mean, I know other religions can do horrible things, but the radical Islam, or just Islamism, whatever you want to call it, the people who really take the Quran seriously and they go out there and they engage in jihad, they are doing horrible things in Great Britain, across the West, but in countries where they have less of an ability to fight back, like their Christian brothers and sisters in Nigeria, it's even worse. Nigerian security forces recorded significant gains against terrorists. So it says that Nigerian security forces are trying to do something, but not enough. And yeah, it's just a horrible picture there. And I want to let you know, if you want to do something for our brothers and sisters in Christ, you can support Equipping the Persecuted. You can buy ETP coffee, and here's a little information about that.
You know, I'm not much of a coffee guy, but my wife, she's a coffee snob in the best way possible, and she's got high standards. When she loves something, you know it's legit. That's why I'm excited to tell you about ETP coffee. This isn't just any specialty roast. This is crafted with excellence and a purpose that's meaningful in the grand scheme. Every single dollar from every bag of ETP coffee goes straight to saving persecuted Christians in Nigeria, where 90% of Christian persecution deaths worldwide have happened in the last 5 years. Your morning brew can do more than wake you up. It can provide food, medical aid, schools, and protection for brothers and sisters suffering for their faith. The Bible says, whether you eat or drink, do it all to the glory of God. With ETP coffee, your daily cup makes an impact for the glory of God. Grab yours at etpcoffee.com and spread the word. Invite your friends to join the mission at etpcoffee.com. Let's drink coffee that changes lives.
All right, there you go. That's how you can help our brothers and sisters in Nigeria. We're going to talk about the Charlie Kirk stuff And then we're going to talk about Eastern Orthodoxy and Jay Dyer and what he said on Tucker Carlson. And then that will be the podcast. We'll do Q&A after that. So I don't have a lot to say. I think there's other podcasts that have done far more on the Charlie Kirk hearing, which is what it is. Just a hearing to see if they can establish probable cause so that they can actually go to trial. And it's overwhelming, the evidence that has been presented showing that it was Tyler Robinson that was doing this, that killed Charlie Kirk. You have the surveillance footage from the campus. You have the text messages and the note to his roommate, Lance Twiggs. You also have Lance Twiggs' actual testimony. You have the DNA evidence on the rifle and the other items surrounding the rifle. You have the ballistics and the engraved ammunition. And it seems like the defense wants to make their entire case maybe on the ballistics. Like, well, do we really know, because the bullet fragmented, that this is really the bullet? You have the casings there, and it has, you know, the actual the engravings that Tyler Robinson put on the casings. You have the fact that this HD 4K surveillance footage that people weren't able to see publicly, but that the family saw and some reporters saw, and they're saying it's Tyler Robinson, and they got him in the act. They literally have him on camera doing it. I want to just say something briefly here. It would take me a whole entire podcast to go through every cockamamie conspiracy theory about who really killed Tyler Robinson, Egyptian airplanes, which was false. The bullets can't, or 30-06 bullets cannot be stopped in a body. They have to go through the body because they're like a cannon, apparently. There are situations where they have been stopped in people's bodies, but more to the point, and I said this months ago, it really matters what kind of ammunition, and we're finding out it's Remington soft points. They're soft points. They're meant to kind of mushroom when they go into, when they start interacting with soft tissue. It explains everything, guys. It's, you know, I see these guys online like I'm a hunter, and I've never seen this happen. Look, I'm a hunter too, and I've seen bullets do weird stuff. Oh, John, was it a 30-06? No, I've seen bullets do weird things when I've had like a 12 gauge slug at 20 yards. I've seen bullets do weird. I mean, I hunt with different firearms. No, mostly it's bow, but I've used 270s. I've used 308s. These are high-powered rifles. Bullets do weird things, okay? I remember there's a deer once. I think this one was with a 12 gauge, but I hit the spine. And it so I hit it horizontally, and then it like twisted and went vertically through the deer. It happens. I knew that as soon as I saw it, but people were just like, oh, this can't happen. There were so many dumb things said by Candace Owens and others. And the big thing to me isn't Candace Owens. Candace Owens is a symptom of something, right? People, for some reason, did not learn the lesson from COVID. The lesson from COVID wasn't never trust the government, irrespective of whose administration it is. I would think the administration should make a difference to you. The fact that the friends of Charlie Kirk are in the administration, I would think that would make a difference. The fact that his family and organization are also friends with the people who are responsible for, at least partially responsible for doing the case on this. But okay, the argument now is anything the government says, if they say the sky is blue, it must be pink. The government just can never be trusted, apparently ever. They're always going to lie to you every time. And someone is bought and paid for by either Israel or the government or just them if they start saying what maybe someone in the government is also saying in an official capacity. That wasn't the lesson that we should have learned from COVID, right? I mean, think about it this way. The government right now is saying things that are the opposite of what the last administration was saying. Even on things like COVID, even on things like election integrity. Are you going to believe Donald Trump's speech on Thursday? It's the government. Are you going to believe what I just said about the Smithsonian? That was a government job. I mean, it's ridiculous. The lesson that should have been learned is that you need to think critically and evaluate sources and use your head. It's not that the government is always wrong, and now we can just turn off our brains and let the government dictate what we believe by just doing the opposite. I mean, a lot of people do that with liberalism now. Like, well, if liberals ever believed it, or a liberal did, it must be bad. Let's do the opposite. Let's do a different ideology. That's not liberalism, right? How about using your brain? Evaluate sources. If you don't know how to do that, take a course on logic, learn about journalistic standards, learn about historiography. In a court case, maybe learn something about how sources are treated and evidence is treated in a court. Why is some evidence admissible and some evidence isn't? Like, why is it that Sean Ryan and I guess this is what I was leading up to, what I was going to say, people like, Sean Ryan and Tucker Carlson and Jake Shields and who's the pizza delivery guy? I forget what his name is. And even guys like Joel Webbin, frankly, there's like multiple clips of him saying like, I think Candace is onto something. And there's this theory about Charlie Kirk and like, guys, honestly, I'm just going to say, I would never listen to those guys on anything that's similar to this again. That's my personal feeling. Now, people can change, but when they change, there's going to have to be a big, humble admission. Man, I got it really wrong on this. I really jumped the gun. I listened to this raving madwoman who suspended all the obvious critical faculties we have to make us blame, to channel our rage that should have been towards left-wing ideology, that should have been towards the actual reason Charlie Kirk was killed. And instead, we're channeling it towards the administration, towards TPUSA, towards Erica Kirk, towards the nation of Israel, towards the French. That's where your rage is going. It's Netanyahu doing it. It's Erica Kirk who wanted to take over TPUSA. Like, and what about all the mantle that the conservatives had in that moment to crack down on Antifa, on left-wing ideology? That's where Donald Trump was going. And it's like all the wind got taken out of the sails overnight. People were arguing about this conspiracy stuff. Frankly, it is such a tell on where people's discernment levels are at. Are they capable of interacting in this world, on leading others by thinking through things? And sadly, many people were not. That's just the truth of it. There's just a lot of grifters out there who knew better. And then there's people who they're so ignorant they didn't know better. And apparently these are all grifters like that Israel and TPUSA and the government can't stop somehow, right? Like the government, they don't seem interested in assassinating Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and the list just goes on and on. Those people apparently, they're not as big of a threat as Charlie Kirk was, I guess. So it channeled rage that should have been towards left-wing ideology, towards Tyler Robinson, towards innocent parties. That is fundamentally, it's unjust. And I know there's going to be people who have a lot of tolerance for this, and maybe they sort of sheepishly kind of crawl back into the bush or whatever, and just want to like, oh, I know I said that. I hope people will forget. Look, my advice is just be public with it. Just say, look, I was wrong. I goofed. I made a big mistake, and I'm not going to do that again. And there are some people that are doing that, by the way. I think there was an MMA fighter, if I'm not mistaken, who did that. Not Jake. It was a different guy. But the guy really critical of Israel and stuff too. But he actually was like, I got taken by this. That's what we need more of. More people that just come out and admit they did the wrong thing. Because what this exposes is that if there's an audience who wants to be part of the drama of Sherlock Holmes and they just like the story or whatever, there is a fundamental cowardice for some reason in conservative and even Christian media to say anything about it, to guard your own people even from this kind of thing. Like if you have a responsibility, if you're in the media, if you have people that are following what you say and you're talking about politics, like you should say something about this. But there are a lot of people who just refuse to do it. Or if they did, it was just not much at all. Like they did not want to be in the eye of Sauron. And it shows you where the incentive structures are. But that's where I'm at. Like, I don't trust any of these guys, and I probably won't trust them again. Like, it's just, it was so far-fetched when people started going down this road. I was like, this is insane. And I remember just like tweeting against some of this stuff, and like the responses I got. Well, now it looks totally insane. And yes, I think once in I think it's September when they decide what they're going to do. I mean, this will meet probable cause. This will go to trial, and you're going to see more evidence come out, and it's going to be obvious who it was that this was Tyler Robinson. And a lot of the dumb things being brought up, like, oh, they went and paved over it. Yeah, it's a blood scene where thousands of students walk around. Like, obviously, if you like, who would leave it up? You gather the evidence, you get everything you need, and then you take it down because it's a public area in which it happened. You don't leave the crime scene up forever. So anyway, all right. I don't even know if I want to take questions on that, but I will if someone really wants to talk about it, I suppose. I have no patience for it. We need truth. If we don't have truth, if we don't have a grounding in truth, then we really are going to be tossed to and fro by any narrative. And again, the topic of the podcast is narrative. People want a certain narrative. They need a certain bad guy. They want to feel a certain way. And so they go towards these things that are totally not true. That's what happened in this. And obviously we need a meta narrative by which to function in life. That's Christianity provides order. There's a God, he created the place, but when it comes to evidence of an actual tangible thing that happened in the real world, there is a process by which we can go through and we can examine to see whether it happened or not, or how it happened. And there's a whole due process set up even in the Old Testament about this kind of stuff. Due process is a real thing. It's important. And none of these people are out there testifying on the part of the defense. And by the way, the defense wasn't using any of these Candace Owens crazy things. They weren't, bringing up like what on Tim Pool. I saw this clip. I think it was Joel Webben, actually, I think, where he was like saying like, well, look, there's this whole theory about the traffic on Google for Tyler Robinson, for his name. It was searched the week before. And you heard all this kind of stuff. You heard that there were all these phones from Israel at the event, and there's all these blue shirts or whatever color shirt, and there's and Tyler Robinson's height was 6'1" or 6'2", I think. So he couldn't be like, it's all this flimsy stuff. For what purpose? To blame who? It's in service of a narrative. It's not because these are serious people trying to understand who actually killed Charlie Kirk and who's actually a threat to us, to Christian conservatives, because that's why Charlie Kirk was ultimately killed. All right, let's talk about what's his name? Jay Dyer, who is on Tucker Carlson. I'm going to play for you a clip, and then I will react to it.
There's an idea in the Middle Ages called nominalism. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
Okay, so nominalism is the idea that there are only names to things, not essences. So there's no human nature. There's no dog nature. When we talk about natures or classes or sets of things, we're not giving an ontological or metaphysical status. We're just simply classing things together linguistically in a set. The Middle Ages and the ancient world, the time of Paul or the church fathers, they thought very differently. They thought that things have natures, they have essences. And so the words aren't just terms or nominal nameism. They actually describe what's really there in them metaphysically. Okay. So there is human nature. And in Orthodox theology, Christ assumes...
Who would deny that?
In the Middle Ages, it begins with people like William of Ockham. So Ockham is the first nominalist. And
the man with the razor.
Exactly. He's known for that. And he challenges some kind of established ideas of like essential. It's called essentialism, that things have essences. And so he also goes up against this idea of universals, that there's no such thing as a universal class or essence of a thing. And that had been kind of the norm since Plato and Aristotle as well. But so you get a denial of essentialism and essences, and then you get another guy named Gabriel Biel, and he's very influential on Martin Luther. And so when the Reformation kicks off, there's this debate about how could you be called righteous if you're not in fact righteous. So if as a human being you are, menstrual rags, as Isaiah says, as the Reformer said, then how could God call you righteous without being a liar? What enter in nominalism, and nominalism is able to say, because things don't actually have essences, they just have names. And so if God calls you that, you are that legally, even though in actual fact you're wicked. So that was, and Luther was very happy to utilize that nominalistic approach. And by the way, this is not just my theory. There's famous Lutheran scholars. There's a book called Harvest of Medieval Theology by Heiko Oberman. And the whole thesis of that book by a Lutheran is that, Luther had to use nominalism. So we're also, though, moving away, not just from theological squabbles, but the idea that things have natures. And this is how we get to David Hume and Kant and these Enlightenment figures, which give us the, scientific revolution, supposedly. This is how we get to, there's no male and female. So you can see kind of the logical train here. If things don't have essences, well, then they don't actually have genders, right? Objectively, because everything is just a name. So I can just name myself he, him, zer, z, it, right? I'm not trying to go too fast or too far in the sense of like theology, but I'm saying there is an ideological sort of progression that you can get from nominalism to where we are now with postmodernism, and then with essentially,
It's interesting that an adult could believe in something like that. I mean, having lived your life, known people, known animals, seen nature, and arrive at the conclusion that nothing has an essence, everything is just what we call it, like that flies in the face of your experience. It has to, right?
What's that saying that you have to be an academic to be really stupid?
Yeah,
right? I
guess that's right.
Yeah. To be indoctrinated into believing some sort. I remember Terence McKenna. Do you remember the psychonaut Terence McKenna? I remember reading it one time, and he said something like, "This is all just magical thinking. This, if you take the shroom, you're going to see that things don't have essences, that things just have names, and you just change the name." And I'm like, that's the gender idea right there.
Okay. I played for you a lot of context there from Jay Dyer. There's more context. If you listen to before this, he talks about Eastern Orthodoxy being supposedly older. It's from the 8th century. Well, but it's really from the early church. We've just never changed anything. And the Protestants knew their novel. And the Eastern Orthodoxy gives people more of a political understanding. It's more of a political and holistic identity. And he gets to this point where Tucker Carlson presses him. Tucker Carlson does actually not press him at all. That's the wrong word to use. Tucker Carlson asks him. Tucker Carlson never presses him. Tucker Carlson just keeps agreeing with him. He asks him about nominalism. What's nominalism? Because Jay Dyer is going on this philosophy kick of this is the argument. The West has nominalism because William of Ockham, he was Catholic, and so the Catholics they took in some nominalism. The Protestants took in some nominalism via Martin Luther. This is what makes sense of their theology, including justification by faith. And fast forward, and that gets you transgenderism. And the first thing that I want to note about this is that Jay Dyer isn't making his argument from Scripture. In fact, he says the Reformers and Isaiah, he quotes the Bible, that Isaiah, they're saying that your righteous deeds are filthy rags. Guys like them, he is arguing against Isaiah. And that's a bold move to say, well, we are consistent. Our church is consistent, but let me argue against Isaiah. So apparently the Reformers, maybe he would say, looking back, well, the Reformers misunderstood Isaiah or something, but he doesn't present it that way in the actual argument, in the actual interview. The accusation is this, that God is, because of nominalism and this idea that there are not categories for things, that the categories exist, but they exist in the mind, their social conventions. They're not actual categories that exist in nature. For example, if we said there's a dog kind, well, we have a language we use for expressing what a dog is, but there really isn't a dog kind in nature. Now, the problem for that example is there literally is kinds of animals in Genesis. There literally is a kind, but when it comes to conceptual things like righteousness, which is what he uses, there is a righteous kind. And he's saying in Eastern Orthodoxy, because they have this doctrine of theosis, we become righteous through discipline, through the Eucharist, the sacraments, we progressively become more and more righteous. And so it's a real thing that happens. And because we believe in the category of righteousness, it's a category that you can become part of, you can join by your behavior matching it. Whereas with Protestants, with people like Martin Luther, he's saying, well, they believed that righteousness was something that God had the freedom to just declare that you were righteous without even being righteous. You just could be righteous because of election, of God declaring you. God's not bound by these categories. Now, this is an interesting argument because Luther, as you'll remember, he is right that Luther has some influences from Gabriel Biel at the University of Erfurt. And Luther, I'm sure, had some, that was kind of in vogue at the time. He would have been a student of William of Ockham on some level. But Luther's justification by faith, if you know the story, it comes from his reading of James and the fact that he was an Augustinian monk. And Augustine is someone I think everyone tries to claim, right? So that's where Luther is picking this stuff up. And he's saying the Roman Church has gotten off track. And he would probably say, if you could see where the Eastern Orthodox Church has taken things now, because I know he said some positive things about Eastern Orthodoxy, he said some negative things, but if you could see what's going on now, I think he'd say, this is also off track. But that's the justification by faith. I don't know of any argument. Maybe a Luther scholar can show me. I looked to see if I could find anything, and I couldn't before the show, where he says, you know what, because of nominalism, or here's my nominalist argument. Here's what Gabriel Biel showed me, and that's why I believe in justification by faith. It's not the motivation. So these are people that are coming later that are imposing upon Luther. They're saying, well, the Protestant theology, it came from this. Now, the subtext of all this is this. The subtext and the situation we're in the United States is Western civilization has failed. America has failed. One of the evidences of that is transgenderism. And Eastern Orthodoxy doesn't have this problem because, look, we don't have the nominalism. Now, the nominalist argument is not a bad one, okay? Richard Weaver makes this argument in Ideas Have Consequences, that this is the slackening hand of Plato. Plato believed in forms and categories, that there was a male form, a female form. And you start going outside of this and saying, there are no forms, we can do what we want. Yes, this is a big problem. The slackening hand of Plato, I'm sure, has some, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm sure there's some connection to the current gender dysphoria, the anarchy that we currently see when it comes to sexuality. However, that being said, you should consider Eastern Orthodoxy on the ground, right? Because it's easy to snipe from a neutral position. But what is Eastern Orthodoxy actually, what are the actual results? Well, they have the Green Patriarch, nicknamed by Al Gore, Patriarch Bartholomew I in Istanbul, the successor of St. Peter, supposedly. And if there's any one figure who would represent Eastern Orthodoxy, it's this guy. And he has spoken on nonviolence, refugees, universal health care, environmental justice, and these are all faith imperatives. He's a lefty. Now, I have to ask the question. I thought Eastern Orthodoxy didn't have nominalism, but the main guy in your tradition, the one who has more authority than anyone else, more status than anyone else in Eastern Orthodoxy, maybe there's some people who would challenge that and say, well, no, we have our Russian Orthodoxy over here. And then you're getting schismatic, though. You don't want to do that, right? So we'll just pretend it's like the one true church. How did it skip over this guy? How come the guy who's looked to from around the world to be the Eastern Orthodoxy guy, the Green Patriarch, why doesn't he? Why does he accept some left-wing liberal things, right? If that's the issue. Furthermore, and I thought that I would just point this out. To me, this is always, there's a lot of things to be said, but to me, this is the thing that I don't think is easily explained. And I have had Eastern Orthodox people, some of them very nice, and they've supported maybe me on some level or listened to me. And they've tried, usually what they'll say is that when I bring up stats like this, that they're either old, outdated. Well, these aren't outdated. Okay. So I got newer ones. Or they'll say, this is from people who are culturally Eastern Orthodoxy who don't actually go to church or something. And I'm thinking, well, like, I don't know, isn't that an across the board thing? Like Catholics, even Protestants, like, wouldn't the stats take measure of all of that? I don't know. Either way, this is a problem. Why are the people who grew up in Eastern Orthodoxy going towards nominalism, going towards liberalism? Well, party affiliation among Orthodox Christians, 50% Republican, 44% Democrat. Okay, so it's basically split down the middle. This is like very different than evangelicals. Views about same-sex marriage, 58% strongly favor. All right. That's more than 2014. I think this is Pew. Political ideology among the Orthodox Christian. Conservative, 32%, moderate, 48%, liberal, 19%. Only 32% conservative. Views about homosexuality among Orthodox Christians, 58% should be accepted. Now, look, I understand there's going to be an attempt to say that they're not real Eastern Orthodox. They're not we don't count those guys. Like evangelicals don't really get that luxury for some reason, but we don't count those guys. We only want to count the ones who agree with us on these social issues. You have to somehow explain how these people who grew up in Eastern Orthodoxy, who identify as Eastern Orthodox, who are attending Eastern Orthodox churches, why they, compared to evangelicals, are so far to the left if the problem is nominalism and if that problem afflicted the Roman Catholics and especially the Protestants. What made Eastern Orthodox people accept those kinds of things, right? And if you go to places like Russia too, I mean, church attendance there, I think I was reading something the other day, it's so low. It's like 5%, something like that. It's a cultural identity thing, but it doesn't have the power. It's not like evangelicals in the Bible Belt in the United States, who I will maintain are the bulwark guys. They really are. So that's my response to Jay Dyer. I didn't feel the need to go deeper into philosophy because I'm an evangelical and I can just be a biblical guy, right? I can look at that and say, you know what? Filthy rags, Isaiah. I agree with that. That's who you are until God does a transformation in you. And that transformation we refer to as justification or sometimes salvation. And then when you become more and more like Jesus Christ in your outward behavior, you start matching who you actually are spiritually. That's called sanctification. And this collapsing it all into theosis and then using philosophical categories to justify it, we're going to let Scripture speak for itself on these matters. And that's how I approach that. So very Pauline, I know. It's looking at the position in Christ, like Ephesians shows you, and then the practice, how you ought to live in light of the position in Ephesians chapter 1 and 2. We were dead, man. He made us alive. That's it. You're saved by grace, not of anything you do. Okay, Eastern Orthodox are nice, Dyerists are not. Yeah, I've gotten that impression. Like he's the guy on social media. I don't see him much, but whenever I do, it's like, debate me, bro, debate me, bro, debate me, bro. And I don't know, he's more annoying in my mind than anything else, but he's the guy a lot of these converts, I guess, like, and I get the impression he's attracting kind of an odd bunch. And it might be bad for Eastern Orthodoxy long term. I remember, quick story about Eastern Orthodoxy. I was at a conference, and it was on the original intent of the Constitution. And I have some friends that are Eastern Orthodox. I have some people I respect who are Eastern Orthodox in political and social circles, and Catholics too, by the way. So, but I maintain the differences. There is a difference. Anyway, there was this guy who was converting from some kind of like big evangelical church. One of the churches like I would never go to, right? Like reinventing themselves every 10 years. And he was saying, like there's no way to interpret the Bible other than how the church sees it. Like, or otherwise you're just off on your own. And so we had to talk about what actually sola scriptura means. And actually it's the stability that you're gaining. You're not losing it. You have an instability when it's up to, when the meaning is located in a body of men. You have stability when you admit that the meaning is actually located in the author's intention itself. And the work of interpretation is something that that there's no barrier to that. You can do that you might have barriers mentally and so forth. But as far as like an ecclesiastical rank or special spiritual guidance that's given to you because you're the Pope or something, like no, like it's the man of God who can rightly divide the word, and it's sufficient. So anyway, we had this discussion, and I said, look, we're at this conference. This conference is about interpreting the Constitution according to the original intent. We realize it's gone off the rails. That's the Protestant position on the Bible. Okay. It's that there is an original intent here, and people have misunderstood and they've applied it wrong, and it's gone off the rails. That was the Reformation. So if you just apply what you're doing here on, and that's a conservative instinct to go back to the original, apply that to religion. And it was, I don't know, I was talking to like a brick wall. I felt like a little bit like, I just don't think he was getting it. But there's a sort of false sense of security you get. I think that's why some people go towards this. I think also they just buy the hype. They just buy like mostly the negative critique about evangelicalism. It's just so bad in evangelicalism. Surely Eastern Orthodoxy must be better. This strange foreign thing we don't know much about, that we haven't experienced much of. Sometimes people go and they enjoy it. I mean, look, I went to an EO service years ago, and the incense and the whole thing. I mean, the Greek and the costumes. There is something about it that feels old. It's 8th century, right? It feels like it. So I get that. You want to feel rooted, especially if what you're used to is some kind of like modern praise band kind of worship service. At the same time, I just don't, long term, I don't think for a lot of these, this is my prediction, I just don't think for a lot of these people it's going to last. I think they're going to realize that what they're looking for isn't really there. Now, some will stick, but that's my perception. I think it's a fad. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I think it's kind of a fad. All right. Well, I'm willing to take questions and cries of outrage or whatever else anyone has on any of this, and we'll go from there. So we got Matt, who says, would Curtis Sliwa's guardian angels qualify as a proper counter institution? Right. Because we're talking about Patriot Front, and I actually don't know. No, I don't think so. Because counter institution would be you're trying to replace the institutions that already exist in society. You're trying to, like Gramsci, right? Gramsci wants to create this alternative structure that is going to be created and then replace the traditional structures. I see Curtis Sliwa as someone who wants to reinforce existing institutions by reporting things to the police, by keeping eyes on the ground. That's my understanding of the guardian angels. I mean, they're just they're a fraternal organization that is made up of people who are members of the police force and members of different prestigious institutions and also blue collar guys, I'm sure. But they're there to kind of like as an extension of the community, not a break with the community to go do something the community is not doing, to posture themselves against the community, to critique the community, to then try to grasp for power and say that we are the captains now, right? Like that's not what Guardian Angels does. So they're not trying to do that. They're not trying to grow into something that can do that. Do you believe, believing Brendan, that the people who are projecting the far right white superiority propaganda on X and being vile in the comments are really Christians? Do you think it varies? It's very confusing. I know exactly what you're talking about because I see it, and I think that a lot of them probably are not actual genuine Christians, and some of them may be, but they may be immature. There's probably a spectrum here. I think you're going to be someone who values truth and is also someone who doesn't use the kind of foul, evil language that I see on X all the time. That is some of those guys are helping grow audiences that, and it's like audience capture. The people who are at the head of those audiences don't seem to want to counter signal it. They want to always do like a moral justification by pointing to something that's worse. I think if you're going to have discipline, if you're going to have people in your group that are going to accomplish things, they have to have standards, and you have to have a real authority structure. It can't be egalitarian. And most of what's online is very third worldist and egalitarian. It's just the way it is. For people who say like they criticize democracy, they want to have dictator, they're still operating in an egalitarian environment to try to gain that, right? Super egalitarian. So all that to say, I don't know. I think there's sort of a breakdown. There's just not a lot of virtuous guys who want to lose their audience, or lack of people who lack virtue, who just don't want to uphold those standards because they don't want to lose their audience. And I think that a lot of the people, by their lips, by the things that they say, like, they're demonstrating they don't have good fruit. But I'm always hopeful that there's guys who, maybe are immature, that are caught up in stuff, and hopefully, they leave it. Because I've even gotten message from guys like that. They're like, hey, I was in the chat group. I was really becoming someone different. I got out of there, and boy, I can't believe what I was becoming. So I've gotten a number of those kinds of messages. So anyway, there you go. Stormy Squad asks, one more question. Who is this country for? Oh, that's more the question. Who is this country for, rather than who's allowed to live here? Yeah, well, I think one drives the other, right? So if it is for ourselves and our posterity, then you can't bring in anyone who's going to be, you shouldn't, adverse to ourselves and our posterity, right? So it's for the people who set up the country, and then the people who are integrated in over time, who become part of it, who marry into it, who adopt the ways and all of that. And frankly, for some of them, they're just here in such large numbers. Like, I live in New York, right? There's a large Italian population. There's a large Irish population. Like, they're here in large numbers, guys. Like, they're essentially at this point, like, what are you going to do? Deport all the Italians? This is their home for generations, many of them. And so yeah, like, they become part of their, and this is sort of the dangerous part, right? Where, like, liberals want to say, like, it's so, being an American is so shallow that anyone can become part of it with very, very basic beliefs. They just want opportunity and freedom, and you're an American. On the right, they just want equality. On the left, you're an American. And it doesn't obviously work that way. It has to be, you have to integrate into the story. There has to be shared experience there. That's how it actually works in real life. You may start with a motive for market participation. It can't end there. And it really shouldn't even start there policy-wise, in my opinion. So all that to say, I think that is the right question, Stormy Squad. Like, it is, who is this set up for? It's for the people who are here. I'm a nativist in that sense, right? Can I say that? I think if all a nativist means is, like, you're for the people who are your neighbors in your local environment, and you favor them, and doesn't mean you hate others. You want others to do well. You want, maybe if they're going to help the people in your area, maybe there are circumstances for them to come in at this is abstract at certain times, not now necessarily, but look, that is a fundamental human instinct, right? I'm like that when it comes to my home. I favor my family, right? I favor my street. I favor, I see my responsibilities and duties as attached to the people I share life with. And I didn't choose those things. I grew up in it. I was born into it. The liberal mindset is the problem. And it's unfortunately created a lot of these counter revolutionary schemes that are also somewhat reductionistic and ideological because of the damage liberalism has done. And I'm I'm not unaware of that. I see why this is happening, and it makes total sense. Like, if you were told forever that lineage and race don't matter at all, and then you're blamed for being white or for your race, what are you going to do? Right? You're going to start to say, like, no, we're not. We're actually, you're calling us evil in ways that we're just not. We're going to defend ourselves. And I think that's a good instinct. That instinct can be taken advantage of, though, by people that have their own ideologies and their own schemes that they want to implement that aren't necessarily like, so I'm trying to say the instinct's good, but some of the places this can go aren't always accurate. They can also be equally reductionistic. All right. We have more comments. Let's see. Do you have any opinion on the publisher Tall Man Books? I'm not familiar. They are in a similar vein to your projects and Brian McClanahan, for clarity. Well, if it's like my stuff and Brian McClanahan, it's probably pretty good. We're just about holistic American tradition and conserving that. We're realistic about it. We know that there's many nations within the American empire. We know that when you look at America, the map of the United States of America, there are places effectively, go to Minneapolis, where it's really not even America anymore on a political level. There's maybe some vestiges, but we're realistic about these things. We understand the situation that we're in, that we're living in. One of the things from Thomas Rousseau's interview that I thought was interesting was he lamented sectionalism, like the Civil War, right? And one of the things about federalism is you want to allow everyone to retain their differentness. There has to be enough similarity to come together for a federal republic, and then enough differences that that people can be their own thing. That rubber band is stretched way too far, though, in places where you have like Islam being the majority religion. It doesn't work anymore. That's the problem. So the solutions going forward are going to be, it's going to be tough. There's going to be, I think we're going to have more violence. I think there's going to be a lot of social problems, but I do think the Trump administration is pushing the needle in the right direction in ways that it has not been pushed in my lifetime. And we need to capitalize on it, build on it, continue the momentum. That's the solution. If we become the enemy of the good, then we won't, it'll all fall apart. We won't get any of it. That's what's actually at stake, right? If you make the biggest critic is now good. If you criticize Donald Trump, he's the big guy you got to criticize now. Then I think there certainly you can criticize Donald Trump, but what's the alternative effectively? What's the political option? You don't have one. It's the left. So this is how politics works. And so I'm a realist when it comes to those things. Black liberal women with past histories of doxing. Okay, so this is Candace Owens, and clearly demonstrated psychopathy and narcissism at that. How many strikes do you need before you choose not to listen to them? Yeah, I know, right? Like it's so frustrating, guys. It really is. Will you ever develop a homeschool curriculum, John? I don't know. My daughter's getting older. I've thought about this. When she's getting to the point where we need to start doing that, I probably will start at least figuring out what her diet's going to be, whether I write, or I'm part of a team that writes textbooks or not. But I do think I'm going to have to cross that bridge when I come to it. And when that happens, sure. Yeah, I'll certainly keep you guys in the loop, and maybe it'll be something that we can put out there that'll be helpful to others. American history is very important. Heritage is very important. Understanding what this country was built on is very important. Integrating yourself into your local community is very important. Getting actual political wins is very important. And to me, that all matters over whether or not you feel correct in your narrative. So to bring it home about narratives, you can be as correct as you want to be and think someone else killed Charlie Kirk or whatever it is. And we've got the real formula. If it's not actually on the ground making a difference, then history will pass you by, right? One of the biggest things you can do to shape history is get married and have kids. It really is. And I'm not saying it's a solution for everything. We need guys who are political operatives, but what do political operatives do? They set the conditions so you can get married, have kids, and go to church. Like it's, and not have crime when you're doing those things. Like that's really what it's about. And that's what people I think need to be focused on a lot. Like I understand the yearning for the glory and the paramilitary stuff. And I'm not even saying it's wrong to go out and train, to get physically fit, to make sure you're going to be a person who's going to help and not hinder in some kind of a disaster if it happens. However, get married, have kids. Like I know some of you are frustrated, you're trying, keep trying. And you're doing a good job. Just keep going, keep praying about it. And that's how civilization ultimately continues. It is a numbers game in some ways. There was a meme I saw the other day. It was a guy. It was the meme. If people, I feel so weird describing a meme, but here we go. There's a meme of like as a corporate office, and you got these three guys with solutions, and there's like the CEO, and the CEO says, "How can we get the percentage of white people up?" And and I like white people, right? I mean, as a descendant of English and Scottish people myself, I mean, look, and a little bit of German in there, little bit of, I don't know what Ancestry keeps updating and giving me new things. It's mainly the British Isles, but look, I love the white people. And so the first guy says, memes and vibes, memes and vibes. And the second guy says, it was something like kill all the minorities or something. It was just like a violent, radical, terrible, awful, horrible, sinful thing. And then just to say crazy stuff to be provocative, right? And then the third guy says, marry white girls and have babies. And, then he gets thrown out of the window. And I just thought, that's so true. Like the government, like that is one thing the government can't tell you not to do. Like, I guess the economy can make it harder for you and stuff, but I don't know, just like make it your priority, like get the welfare, whatever, get married and have kids, just as many as you possibly can. That's my advice. Cosmic Treason. I like white people, right? Jon Harris, it's July 14th, 2026. Yes. Can John not see comments? I can see comments. But I mean, look, Cosmic Treason, you've left me, I don't know how many comments. I'm not going to get to all of them. I like white people. I love white people too. You could say I'm white myself as a half white, half Anglo, half Slav. Oh, Slav, man. I don't know, man. I don't know. The Slavic peoples were not signing the Declaration of Independence. I don't know if Thomas Rousseau let you in. All right. God bless, guys. I hope this was a helpful episode for some of you. It is a mega edition, over 2 hours. We got to land the plane. I will see some of you next week. This weekend in Batavia at Michael Foster's conference. And I wanted to end with this particular song. So as you know, my album Heritage is out there, johnharristunes.com. And here's one of the Christian songs that I wrote for the album. And it's got good pictures of me kayaking and what the scenery looks like on the Hudson River in the area where I currently live. And it's really beautiful. So God bless.
The toils of this life, in our darkness, in our strife, there's a morning dawning bright for you and me. There's a hope beyond the grave. Those who tarry won't remain. We'll all see our Savior's face in promised land. The promised land, the promised land. We're all bound for promised land. Come and join our merry band to promised land. They're all waiting there for me, my eternal family. And rejoicing we will be all with the Lord. No regrets, no tears to dry. When we reach the other side, we'll be living once we die in promised land. The promised land, the promised land. We're all bound for promised land. Come and join our merry band. Promised land. Gates of pearls and streets of gold, and those mansions we are told will replace the worn out scroll in promised land. In Jerusalem they say, there's no night, it's always day. We will ever hope and pray for promised land. The promised land, the promised land. We're all bound for promised land. Come and join our merry band to promised land. So when the world attempts your soul, lies and says you'll have control, in the end we all grow old and in the ground. When Trump, then he'll meet us. lost but found are found in promised land. The promised land, the promised land, we're all bound for promised land. Come and join our merry band to promised land. The promised land, the promised land, death can't catch us, no it can't. We're all in the shepherd's hands in promised land.